Alright, so today we're starting section 2, topic 2 from Algebra Nation. And it is called Linear Equations in One Variable, Part 2. Linear equations in one variable, part 2. And I'm recording this in my first period class, so in this class today is 9/11. For those of you watching at home. Okay, example 1. Two people are installing pavers in your neighbor's backyard. The formula for the total work rate, as a function of the combination of individual work rates is T divided by A plus T divided by B equals 1. Where T is the time to do the job together, and A and B represent the time it takes person A and person B to do the job respectively. Bless you. Bless you. And the question says, rearrange the formula to find the time it takes person A to complete the job. So what we're going to do is, since it wants us to rearrange the formula to find the time it takes person A to complete the job, we are going to basically isolate the A. All right, and a lot of kids get confused on these. They're called literal equations because they see variables and not numbers, and that confuses them. But you would simplify, or you would isolate the A in this case, just like if that was numbers there, okay? So treat it just like it's numbers. Remember all those properties we talked about last class? Okay, so I want to get A by itself. Right now, what I would like to do first is to clear those fractions, okay? So you know how we can multiply every term by the least common denominator? Well, if our denominator is A and B, what would our least common denominator be? AB, right? So if I want to clear those fractions, I'll multiply every term by the least common denominator, which is AB. So my first term, you could either multiply, remember when you multiply fractions, you do numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So I could multiply AB times T, and then the A's would cancel. Or I could just go ahead and cancel the A's out to begin with, because A and A will cancel. And then we just have B times T, which is what? BT. Plus, I can go ahead and multiply A times B times T, or I can see on this one that my B will cancel and leave me with what? AT equals, on the right side I didn't have a fraction, so 1 times A times B is just AB. And what is it that I'm solving for? A, okay. So I've got this term, A is on the left, A is also on the right. I could do a couple of different things at this point. Probably I would choose to, bless you, I could move this AT over here, I could move this AB over here, I could move the BT over here and the AB over to the left side. There's several things I could do. Probably, I'm thinking I will just, since I have an A over here on the right, I'll just move this term over to the right. So how would I do that? I would, if it's plus AT and I want to move the whole term, I would subtract AT from both sides. So I have on the left BT, AT minus AT makes 0, so we don't need to put plus 0, equals AB minus AT. They're not like terms, so I can't combine them. All right, do you realize that both of those terms both have an A? Yes, so we can that's a common factor we can factor out, right? So if I factor out an A on the right side, I'll have BT equals, I'm going to factor out an A and see what is left. So greatest common factor is A. Do you know what to do if I factor that out? How will I know what's left? Y'all remember? Let me do it over here on the side. AB minus AT. I'm going to factor out an A. So to see what's left after you factor it out, you do it just like if it were numbers there. You would divide both terms by A, and whatever's left goes in the parentheses. So what is AB divided by A? B. Negative AT divided by A. Negative T or minus T, right? And just to double check, if I go back and distribute, A times B is AB, A times negative T is negative AT, correct? So over here I'll have A times B minus T. Now I'm getting close to having A all by itself, but I don't want to go back and redistribute because I just factored it out. I don't want to distribute it back in, okay? A is being multiplied by what's in parentheses. We want to get rid of that. So what is the inverse of multiplying times b minus t? Divide, right? So this is now one term. I'll divide the whole term by b minus t. And then what I do to the left side, I got to do to the right side. So on the right side, b minus t's cancel. I'm left with a. And on the left side, I have bt divided by b minus t. And those cannot cancel because I have a monomial in the top, a binomial in the bottom. That binomial could only cancel with another b minus t. Okay? So a's isolated. There's nothing else I can do. That's my answer. You're not gonna, when you have multiple variables like that, you're not just gonna simplify for a number. Everybody cool with that? Okay, anybody still writing? Example 2. So I won't be taking pictures of my notes. I'll be putting the whole video on Edmodo. Remember, don't forget to sign up for your Edmodo account. And so to get the notes, if you're absent, you're kind of forced to watch the video unless you get it from somebody, but it's helpful to hear it, you know, instead of just seeing it. It's helpful to do both. And the only way I can upload my video to Edmodo is to first post it on YouTube and then attach the link to Edmodo. Because the video is too big, Edmodo won't accept it, so I have to do a link, okay? So, and I think you can watch YouTube here at school now, right? You can access it. Last year you couldn't, but I think they changed that. But at home, you shouldn't have any problem, even if you can't watch it here at school, all right? But that's why it's on Edmodo, not because I'm trying to be YouTube famous. The videos are too large, Edmodo won't accept them. All right, example 2, A equals P plus P R T. And we want to rearrange the formula to solve for P. Rearrange the formula to solve for P. Okay, so right now the A is isolated. We want the P to be isolated. Anybody have any ideas of what we might want to do? There's several things you could do, but to get to the answer the quickest, bless you. Any ideas? Well, if we divide by RT, we'll have to divide every term. So that means we'd also have to divide this P by RT, so we're going to be creating a fraction. Not that you couldn't, but it would be making it more to do. You know what I'm saying? You have an idea? I could subtract PRT from both sides, but we want to get P by itself. So now you're just moving this P to the other side away from this P. Not that you can't do that, but it might not be the quickest route. So P parentheses, so you're saying maybe it's factor out the P, common factor of P. That's what I would do. Since you have two terms here, and they both have a P in them, and that's what you're trying to solve for, let's factor out that greatest common factor of P, okay? So you would have A equals, I want to factor out a P, it's a common factor. So remember, when you're factoring out a GCF, greatest common factor, divide both terms by the GCF. Now what is P divided by P? 1. I can't just say it cancels, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then positive divided by positive is positive. What's PRT divided by P? RT. Now a lot of students will go, oh, it just cancels, and they won't put anything there. Well, if you were checking your answer and you were going back to distribute, if you don't put anything here, then you won't know that you had that term. But P times 1 is P, right? P times RT is PRT. If you don't put anything there, then you lost that placeholder and you changed the meaning of the problem. Now what should we do? Divide by 1 plus R times T, because it's being multiplied by P. We want it to go away, so the inverse of that would be to divide by 1 plus RT, which would be rate times time. So on the right side, the 1 plus RT cancels and just leaves me with P. On the left side, I have A divided by 1 plus RT. And you don't have to put the parentheses, they're not necessary, but you can, it doesn't matter. Or P equals A divided by quantity of 1 plus RT. Everybody cool with that? Number 3. We have R equals AB divided by A plus B. And I want to rearrange the formula to solve for B. Okay, now this one is a little bit tricky. Let's go ahead and clear the fraction. Let's do that first. So what would I need to multiply every term by if I wanted to clear that fraction? A plus B. Bless you. So on the left side, I have R, open parentheses, A plus B equals, on the right side, A plus B and A plus B cancels, and so I just have AB in the numerator. And I'm trying to solve for B. So if I divide both sides by A plus B, then I'm just going to end up with what I started with. So that's not really going to help me. So how about let's go ahead and distribute that R on the left side and then see what we can do from there. So R times A is RA. R times positive B is positive RB equals AB. So remember, we're trying to get our B's together. We have B's on the left and B's on the right. Any idea what we could do next to try to get closer to the solution? Yes? You could do either. I would probably subtract RB, because if we subtract AB over here, then we're going to have to move the RA to the other side. So it's just an extra step, but I mean, it's fine. So I would probably, just to save that step, I would go with the minus RB. So on the left we have RA equals, on the right we have AB minus RB. Not like RBs, just RB. All right, we're trying to isolate the B. On the right side, we have a B in both terms. What do you think we should do? Greatest common factor, right? They both have a b. That's what we're trying to isolate, so let's factor it out. So we have RA equals, I want to factor that b out. So to figure out what's left, divide both terms by the GCF. And what is left? A minus R. Anybody have any questions? Y'all stop me if you don't understand something. Still trying to solve for b. It's being multiplied by A minus R. What could I do now? Divide by what? A minus R. Very good. Oops. So on the left, again, I have a monomial divided by a binomial. I cannot just cancel those a's out. If they were both monomials, you could. Remember, monomial means one term. But you've got a monomial divided by a binomial. Only way you could cancel out this a minus r is if you had an a minus r in the numerator. Okay? So these a's do not cancel. So you're left with RA divided by the quantity of a minus r equals a minus r divided by a minus r is 1. 1 times b is just b. Everybody cool with that? You may have questions? Anybody still writing? Okay, example 4. Now these can get pretty complicated. They can be super easy. The ones I've given you so far are a little on the complicated side. But sometimes you really have to think what to do. And you may not get there the fastest way. That's okay. As long as what you're doing is legal mathematically, then that's fine. You may not get, you might not get there the quickest possible way. As long as you get there correctly, it doesn't really matter. All right, example 4. We have S equals, make sure S looks like an S and not a 5, N divided by 2 times the quantity of A plus L. And we want to rearrange the formula to solve for L. Okay, so you could go ahead and distribute n divided by 2 to what is in parentheses. You could do that. Or you could go ahead and clear that fraction, because right now, while you have this fraction multiplied by what's in parentheses, that's a product when you multiply together. So a product is considered one term. It kind of looks like 3, but it's not. That's one term because it's a product, okay? So we could easily clear the fractions. Since this technically is one term, you multiply that whole thing by the denominator of 2, and of course you have to multiply the s by 2. And instead of distributing that, making more fractions, you could just get rid of that 2 right away. And then you would have 2s equals, on the right side my 2's cancel, leaves you with n, open parentheses, a plus L. Now, you may want to divide both sides by a plus L, but remember, you're wanting to get L by itself. If you divide both sides by a plus L, you just made another fraction with L in the denominator, so you might not want to do that. If you didn't do that, what else could we do? we could distribute the n, correct? So we have 2s equals n times a is NA, n times positive L is positive NL. Trying to isolate the L. Am I going too fast? Yeah. Because this is one term, okay? I don't want to multiply each part of this by 2 because it's one term. While it's before you distribute, if I distributed this, I'd have 2 terms. But right now, since it's a product, it's considered one term, so you only multiply each term one time by the least common denominator. Okay? Alright, so what do I do now? Yes. If I divide it by n because it's least common denominator, I would end up with this step right here. So we'd end up where we were. What else? Subtract an a. Okay, that's probably what I would go with. Subtract an a from both sides. So you have 2s minus na. Those are not like terms. You cannot combine them. Equals na minus na is 0. 0 plus nl is just nl. So now I'm one step closer to getting L all by itself. What now? Divide every term by n. And I could do one big divide by n, but since I know these n's are going to cancel, because that's a monomial divided by a monomial, I can cancel that. That's why I did them separate. So I've got 2s divided by n minus, I can cancel those n's, like I said, because it's a monomial divided by a monomial, so you can cancel just the n's. So I have minus a equals n divided by n cancels and leaves me with L. L's by itself, that's all we can do. Everybody cool with that? Alright, let me have you try some. And hold on, I'll be right back. Alright, y'all do this one on your own. We're going to start out easy, okay? We're going to, or you're going to solve E equals I R for R. This one's crazy. What do I do first, y'all? Divide by I. Trying to get R by itself, so that'd be a good start. So E divided by I is E divided by I. And IR divided by I is just R. Everybody get that? Okay. How about this one? Let's do D divided by T equals R. Distance divided by time equals rate. And we want to isolate or solve for t. Standardized tests love problems like these. These literal equations, you're going to definitely see these. What should I do first on this one? What? Multiply by t will clear the fraction. So on the left side, t divided by t cancels, and we're left with d equals rt. So we're trying to isolate t, but we've currently isolated d. So we're not finished, right? What are we going to do to get that t by itself? Divide by r. So that gives me d divided by r equals t. And we have a question on that? Okay, example 3. Am I still copying this before I move my paper? Our equation is A equals 1/2 H open parentheses B sub 1 plus B sub 2. You know, 1/2 height times base of the first base plus the second base. And we are going to isolate B sub 1. Stepping it up a little bit. Say it again. Yes. 1/2 height times base of 1 plus base of 2. Y'all probably did this in geometry as well. What should I do first, do you think? I could distribute You can do that totally. But me personally, I would probably, because right now, and this is one of those concepts that it's kind of hard to get across, okay? I am multiplying 1/2 times height times what's in parentheses. That's all being multiplied together, so that's a product. A product is one term, okay? So I could easily clear this fraction right now, why this is all one term, just by multiplying this whole thing by 2, and of course the a by 2. I don't multiply 1/2 times 2 and h times 2 and base of 1 times 2 and base of 2 times 2. I don't do that. This is all one term, so I multiply the whole thing by 2 and it will just cancel that out. Did you have a question? Or are you going to tell me that? Sorry. Okay. So 2 times a is 2a equals, on the right side, my 2's cancel, so I have 1 was my numerator times h is 1h, so I'm just going to have h, correct? Times base of 1 plus base sub 2. So now I would distribute. Okay, so I got rid of that fraction. That's going to make my problem a little less complicated of not having that fraction there. I wouldn't want to divide both sides by base of 1 plus base of 2, because then I'm just creating a fraction over here and I'm going to have to get rid of it again. So I would go ahead and distribute the h now. So I have 2a equals h times base of 1 is h base of 1. H times positive base of 2 is positive h base sub 2. And remember, I'm trying to get base sub 1 by itself. What could I do at this point? Subtract h base of 2. So we can move that over. So on the left side, I have 2a minus h base of 2 equals, the h base of 1 will bring down, h base of 2 minus h base of 2 is 0, so we don't need to write plus 0. Trying to get h all by itself, base of 1 by itself, what could I do now? Divide every term by h. So I have 2a divided by h minus, this is a monomial divided by a monomial, so I can just cancel those h's out, okay? And just leave me with base of 2 equals, on the right side my h's cancel or turn into 1, and 1 times base of 1 is just base of 1. Now sometimes they may draw one big line and put an h on the bottom and then not cancel that h out. You may see it written like that too, but I think if something can reduce, then you should. But like the notes that I got this from, they did not write it like I did. They just drew it over one big H and left it not reduced, okay? So you'll see it both ways. All right, let me give you one more example to do on your own, and then I'll give you a class assignment, okay? I have I equals Pn divided by Rn plus A, and we want to isolate N. What's the first thing I could do? I can multiply every term by Rn plus A, right? Clear the fractions. So on the left side, I'll put the single term first. I have I times Rn plus A equals, on the right side, the Rn plus A's cancel, and I'm left with Pn. Let's distribute, yes. So I times Rn would be IRN. I times positive A would be positive IA equals Pn. So on the left side, I do have a common factor of I, but if I factor that out, is it going to do me any good? No, because it's going to turn into what we just had, and we're not trying to isolate the I, so that doesn't do us any good. I'm trying to isolate the N. What could I do? Well, I could. However, I still have this N over here. Yeah, so let's move the N's so that they're on both sides. So I'll subtract IRN from both sides. So on the left, I would just be left with IA equals, subtracting, Pn minus IRN. We're solving for N. I got two terms. They both have an N in it, so that's a common factor. What could I do? Factor out the N, correct? So I have IA equals. I'm going to factor out an N. So what am I left with? P minus IR. Now what? Divide both sides by P minus R, because it's being multiplied by N. I want to get rid of it, undo it. Then I would divide both sides by P minus IR. So now on the right side, N is by itself. Since it's the isolated variable, I like to put that on the left side. And then I would have IA divided by P minus IR. I cannot cancel those i's out because I have a monomial in the numerator, a binomial in the denominator. So I can't just pick out parts. If I had a monomial divided by a monomial, I could just reduce parts. But monomial divided by binomial, I can't do that. N's by itself, nothing else we can do. Good to go. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, so I'm going to stop the video and give you an assignment. If I can remember how to stop the video. Control plus something.